Welcome along to Betting Weekly Extra Time European Edition. You're with Dan Roebuck alongside me, Steve Wyess and James Eastham. Is it a curio, fellas, as I say good morning to one and all, about Champions League goals versus domestic league goals? Champions League midweek, goals galore again. 36 games in the league phase, 129 goals, 3.58 average. Plus 14 points for over 3.5 bettors, incidentally. But Premier League is down year on year. Liga is down year on year. Serie A is down year on year. LaLiga about the same. Bundesliga is up, as we know. Steve, any reason why domestic leagues aren't following Champions League or vice versa? Champions League is so much higher. Any thoughts, and good day to you?
Yeah, well, good day to you both. And I've been thinking about this question for the last hour. And the only real reasons I can come up with is that in the leagues, that there's just simply more familiarity with the teams. Whereas in the Champions League, these teams aren't playing each other week in, week out, are they? And there seems to be, we know the fewer draws in the Champions League the first year and a half of this new phase. In addition to that, it might just be a situation where we've simply got more defensive managers in these leagues at this moment. It goes in cycles. And it could be sheer variance. But one thing I will say is, when do we expect there to be quite a few goals in leagues? Between August through to, say, November, we would expect a reasonable amount of goals. Then we'd expect them to go down a little bit and then come back again sort of March time. So we could actually end up with a season at the end of it where those leagues you mentioned do just simply have a lower than average goal numbers compared to most years. It can happen. It's just the way it goes. But it's a tough question, and there's no real obvious answer. Just a few thoughts there from me.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that overs bettors are winning money. Overs bettors outnumber unders bettors for sure. It's just the natural order of things with an awful lot of bettors. James, any thoughts from you on why Champions League is so high? But because we are the European show talking about domestic leagues, why you think, for example, Liga is down a little bit this season?
Yeah, I have a theory on League One being down. I think the quality of the football has got poorer this season, is my view. And these days, I tend to associate better quality football with higher scoring games because that's the way football has generally gone over the last 10, 15 years. League One at the moment, I think technically is down on where it was last season. There's a deeper conversation about the impact of the domestic TV deal in League One, which has collapsed, meaning clubs couldn't sign players over the summer. There were far more selling clubs than buying clubs in League One. So it's just my theory on that, but I'd be very interested to hear what other people think in the comments below, because we've got lots of viewers who follow all the top leagues in Europe very closely. So yeah, it's interesting. Steve's right about variance. Yeah, we're obviously still early in the season. It might change, but I think at the moment there are one or two patterns emerging.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably more a focus on the Champions League than domestic leagues. I think we'll see a bit of an upward curve for those leagues that are down this year. The Champions League with the league phase, maybe it just will continue to be different. I've been banging on about the draws for the last however many months. -4, incidentally, if you're playing the draws this season on the league phase. But look, yeah, maybe it's just the league phase is different, and there's just going to be more goals in that, and domestically things will start to rise. But hopefully, bettors have been on the right side of the overs and unders. Profit and loss on screen for the season for you. This is how the boys have done so far in the 25-26 campaign across the 4 leagues that we deal with. Plenty to discuss on today's show. We've got some smart plays coming your way. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to the newsletter, bettingweeklystudios.com. Plenty of facts, stats, tips, analysis, and so on. Get your comments in the chat on YouTube. We are here all weekend, as they say, to answer your questions. Always great to know what you are betting. Make sure you subscribe and like. 2 unit plays off the bat then from the boys. We're going to kick off with Steve's best bet of the weekend. We go to Spain and La Liga. It's Sevilla against Barcelona. It's a 10:15 a.m. Kickoff Eastern on Sunday. Barcelona, a short price favourites here, -245. They did suffer a loss in midweek to Paris Saint-Germain. First time that they have had less of the ball in a match in which they didn't have a player sent off for almost a year. Whether that means anything, I don't know. Steve, what do you got for us? What's your 2 unit play?
Well, I'm going over 3.25 goals for the 2-unit play. And to be honest, Sevilla are starting to just annoy me a bit because I have -3 units on them on this show this year involving their games. But every other match, I've cashed with the lean, with the over. So the way I see it is that Sevilla games are just going to regularly go over the goal mark this season. And, maybe I might try it. Maybe the next 10 weeks, I'll always have a pick on them. Because it's interesting that some of their sort of overs, the bigger overs, have come when you maybe less expect it to happen. 2-2 draw against Elche, 3-2 against Athletic Bilbao. And you look at this goal line, 3.25, and it might put a few people off. If you look at the actual stats from their games, the expected goal numbers, they've had a lot of games go over 2.5, but not as many go over 3.5. So it might be one of those. I've got a feeling they're due a really, really wild over sooner or later, like crazy over. And, the fixtures last season with these two sides was, Barcelona ran riot 4-1 and 5-1. And Barcelona coming in off a loss in the Champions League, they're going to be fired up, aren't they? They'll want to put down a statement. Just think the way that Sevilla play will give even more opportunities than normal to Barcelona. And let's be honest, they could cover this goal line all on their own quite comfortably. But Sevilla are usually good for a goal sooner or later. Last week at that Rayo game, I had no idea how it ended 1-0. It looked like it was going to end goalless somehow, but Sevilla were really outplayed actually. Rayo missed so many chances. The goalkeeper was man of the match for me, for Sevilla. He can't get that lucky another week, can he? So, 2-unit play over 3.25 Asian goals. Again, I'm sticking to this strategy for the high unit plays. Just go on a goal line which is lower than perhaps normal. There'll be those out there who want to play over 3.5 goals. Part of the reason I took this for 2 units was, to stop myself going something stupid on a hot dog like over 4.5, 5.5, because I do like a lot of goals in the game, but I wanted to just sort of stay within the percentage play of the main goal line of 3.25. And like I said, there's 2 reasons for it. Barca can cover it on their own; they're going to be fired up, and then Sevilla, just the way they play. It's just for me, it's a fairly obvious looking play. For some out there, they might not look at this and think it is obvious. But if you keep betting on over goals with Sevilla on the main goal line, the main Asian goal line, I am absolutely convinced you'll be in profit.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. We've talked about Sevilla a lot on the show. They conceded 1.8 XG against Rayo. How Rayo didn't score, I've got no idea. But they didn't. But even if we don't have these picks on the show and they're not focused, it's one of those ones that if you're going to play, the system with Sevilla, just play it small over the course of 10 weeks or so. Even if we don't mention it, that would be my advice for that one. All Sevilla's wins, incidentally, away from home, which is maybe just a bit of a quirk. Over 3.25 goals is Steve's 2U play here. Let's get James's best bet of the weekend. We go to France, 11 a.m. Saturday Eastern. It's Metz against Marseille here. Marseille are short, -205 here. This is only the second time since De Zerbi took over that Marseille are -200 or shorter away from home in a Liga fixture. Are we taking Marseille to win somehow, or are we fading them with Metz? James?
We're taking Marseille to win, Dan. I'm very confident about them this weekend. So the play is on the Asian handicap because, as you say, they're very short on the money line. Marseille -1 on the Asian handicap is the play at -125. So you'll get your stakes back if Marseille win by a single goal, and you'll make a profit if they go on to win by 2 or more goals, as they did in midweek when they won 4-0 at home to Ajax in the Champions League, which was the latest in a series of very impressive performances from Marseille. They go into this game in really good form. Hat-trick of wins behind them, and against good teams as well. They beat PSG about 10 days ago now, 1-0 in the league, and then they did brilliantly to beat Strasbourg away from home last weekend, and then that win against Ajax. So brilliant form at the moment from Marseille. Played really well in all of those games. This is a mismatch on paper. This is a much easier game for Marseille in theory than the games they've just had. Metz are bottom of the table. They're winless after 6 games. There's already a 10-point gap opened up between these two teams. It's a very winnable away match for Marseille. And I looked at it every which way to try to find a counter argument for my play. It's difficult to see one because anybody that's watched Metz this season, I think their intentions have been pretty good. They've been fairly positive in what they've tried to do, but they were really poor in the final third last weekend against Le Havre. They drew that game 0-0. They've got a manager who's done really well to get them up into this division, but has got no prior experience in League One. I think he's being challenged at the moment by trying to put out a competitive team week on week. So hard to see why Metz this weekend would put up much resistance against a Marseille side who are absolutely flying. And, if you're a bit worried about fatigue in the Marseille ranks, because they have had those 3 wins they've just had in fairly quick succession, look at some of the players they were able to leave on the bench against Ajax. I've got some of the names here. They started the match without Leo Balerdi, the Argentina centre-back. He was on the bench. Angel Gomez was on the bench. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg was on the bench. Timothy Weah was on the bench. He started the season really well. And the striker Amin Gouiri was on the bench. I think what that does, it just shows the squad strength that Marseille have got this season, which was deliberate. They went out in the summer to build a squad so they could compete in the Champions League and League One, and it was for exactly this kind of match, to make sure they don't drop points when they play in League One straight after big Champions League nights. So I think every single angle on this game points towards Marseille. It would be a really big shock to me if they don't get this one, and if they do win the game, then at the very least you'll get your stakes back. So it's my 2-unit play. It's Marseille -1 on the Asian handicap at -125.
2U play for James. There'll be plenty following James in, including Steve.
Yeah. It's a tough looking card actually in France. Just a couple of bets I like, but this is the only real bet I'm really in love with this week. If we still had the standalone Liga show, and those were the days, weren't they, James, of great profit, and shout out to Rob Daly and all that. Then this would be my 2-unit play if it was just a French show, no doubt about it. It's just a standout bet. There's no real argument apart from the head-to-head. Marseille have only won one of the last 7 against Metz, but this is such a poor Metz. James said at the top of the show how poor the actual level of soccer is in general in Liga, and teams like Metz are adding to it. They're just, they've got good intentions, but they just lack quality. They're not good enough. It's a mismatch, and it's funny with Marseille. Marseille look better playing more matches this season. Like last year, we loved them because the dynamics, they weren't in the Champions League, but they seem to be playing better the more games they're playing. It's a strange sort of rhythm, so it can happen like that. They do have a bigger squad. This should be a clear away win, and I totally agree with James. I think it's a great play.
-1 on the Asian line for James and Steve with the lean there as well. Incidentally, the last time that they were this sort of price away from home, they did win and did cover a -1 Asian line. They beat Le Havre 3-1. Last term, let's get some 1U plays. Steve is first up. We go to Germany, Werder against St. Pauli. This is a 9:30 a.m. Saturday game. We've got some Bundesliga Leans a little bit later on in the show. Steve's been flying with those, but we have got an official pick here as well. Continues to be the biggest overs league amongst the top leagues in Europe. 3.48 average so far. Only 5 of 9 went over 2.5 last week, though. Buyers beware, that would have resulted in a level stakes loss, I would have thought. But overall, if you're backing over 2.5, over 3.5, you're +3, +5 respectively. What's the official play then for the overs this week in Germany, Steve?
Well, I wish there'd been a standalone Bundesliga show this season. I'd be about +20 units, wouldn't I?
Who presented that one?
Do you know what? I was never on the Bundesliga show. When it was,
Neither was
who was it? It was George, I think. George with Rob presented it, and George was with.
I've never heard of any of these people. I don't know who they are.
We're going to trip down memory lane. Anyway, over 2.5 goals. Werder Bremen against St. Pauli. I mean, coming up later, I've got quite a few leans in Germany, which are overs, and it's a question of which one did I pick. I nearly went 2 units on this actually. I've mentioned before, St. Pauli, I think, are going under the radar for more open games this year. And, some of the results are showing it. Sometimes they're not showing it. But every game has had at least 2 goals in their fixtures. And, we've got a Werder Bremen side here who've just conceded 7 goals in the last 2. All right, one of those against Bayern, 4-0. But prior to that, they actually won 4-0 themselves. So it's a real mixed bag of results, isn't it? But I think they'll both fancy beating each other. And the way that St. Pauli have been operating this year is definitely a lot different. I've noticed some changes. This was 0-0 in April last year. I just don't really see 0-0 again. The way that both teams are playing, really, but Bremen just don't look defensively good enough, and St. Pauli are offering way more of a threat. So we can get just a straight goal line, 2.5 over at -134. I mean, you could play around and go 2.75, 3 goal line, even 3.5 if you wanted to. But we don't need to overcomplicate it, do we? When we got -134 for a simple 1-unit play. I'll say I was very close to the 2-unit play on this selection. In some ways, I'm actually more confident about it than the Sevilla match. So hopefully I don't regret that switch of units. But there's not much more to add, really. I've mentioned St. Pauli nearly every week, haven't I, Dan? I think since the opening round, and nothing's changed there. Bremen, I just don't see how they can keep clean sheets at this point in time. So good line value, and just get on these overs while we still can in Germany.
They give up, according to my numbers, St. Pauli, they give up good chances to the opposition. That's my sort of takeaway from them. There's a lot of metrics that suggest they are vulnerable at the back. Over 2.5 for Steve, -134. Good price, about a Bundesliga game for that line. Let's get James's one you play. We go to Italy and Napoli against Genoa here. This is Sunday, midday kickoff Eastern. Napoli are short, -220. Looked at that Genoa game last week. They were beaten by Lazio 3-0. They had 65% possession on that one, still got beat. Yeah. Napoli bouncing back after the Milan game, which I thought they were unlucky in, to beat Sporting midweek. How are we tackling Napoli-Genoa for your one use, James?
I am supporting Napoli here, Dan, who are really short on the money line, as you would probably expect. At home, they're -220, so I'm backing them on the Asian handicap with a -1 goal start, which is available at -121. And I think Napoli are fascinating at the moment because we're obviously getting used to them as title holders. How do they go about the defence? I thought they were a bit unlucky too in that game against Milan last weekend when they lost 2-1. And there has been criticism of them I've seen from the fans about losing that match. And there are a few issues I think that Antonio Conte is dealing with here. Obviously, Romelu Lukaku is still out. There's a slight question about fitting Kevin De Bruyne and Scott McTominay into the same midfield and getting the best out of both of them. And we mentioned on the show last weekend as well, they've made a habit of changing their centre-back partnership from game to game almost. So things not quite perfect yet for Napoli, but I think it's important to not overreact to that Milan defeat last weekend because they're facing a Milan team who are doing really well and are now actually up to second favourites in the futures market. And Napoli have won their other 4 matches so far this season in Serie A, and they've bounced back and had that win over Sporting in the Champions League in midweek. So I think things are still pretty good generally. There's lots of quality in this Napoli side, even if they are still sorting things out tactically. And Genoa are struggling. There's no doubt about it. I said it in my notes to you, Dan. This pick is as much about Genoa as Napoli because there's lots of problems there. They're without a win. They've lost 3 out of 5. And I think significantly in that defeat to Lazio last weekend, they gave up 6 big chances in that game to a team who, like you say, didn't even have a lot of possession. I think that's a real concern because, as Steve has said so many times over the last 12 months, the big positive for Genoa up until now under Patrick Vieira has been they've been pretty good defensively. That's been the sort of the focus of the side, and it's generally been what's kept them in games and got them points. So I think that's a real concern. There are signs that defensively Genoa aren't really at it at the moment, and I think going away from home here on the back of that 3-0 defeat to Lazio to face Napoli is a pretty scary prospect, I think, for Genoa fans. So I think Napoli will get the win. They maybe do need a little bit more quality than we've seen to win it big, but I think they should get the win at the very least. So it's my 1-unit play. It's Napoli on the Asian handicap, -1 goal start.
Just briefly on this one from you, Steve, as well, because I think both of you called it about Patrick Vieira, and we're still at the top of the slide, I think, aren't we? Just, I mean, they've gone over the edge. I mean, you guys were talking about it last week. I mean, is this we fading Genoa every week for the next few? Do you think, Patrick? potentially might not see out the calendar year here.
I'm worried. I sound like Danny Murphy on Match of the Day, don't I? There, but I'm worried for Genoa. I really am. This is a very typical Patrick Vieira cycle, isn't it? Where when they start to lose the defensive rigidity, I don't know what it is. He can't seem to kick on to the next level. It's actually happened earlier than I expected here. I mean, there was a quote that I was looking at for this game. He said after last week that they lacked aggression, they lacked defending and quality, and he said they failed under every aspect. And that was really worrying comments. And at the minute, yeah, they're a fade, aren't they, Genoa? Yeah. And I'm not sure Patrick Vieira's still in the job by Christmas.
Yeah, I think that could be right. Unfortunately for Patrick, let's get Steve's hot dog next up. The big price runners are featured next, and we go to Spain Sunday 12:30 Eastern for La Real against Rayo. I think Real Sociedad here at even money are very, very sure I'd play Rayo somehow, but we're going to go to corners, and if you've been watching the live show, you'll know how Steve is going to tackle this, because Rayo and corners are going hand in hand at the moment, Steve.
Yeah, that was the bet I should have had last week. The amount of corners in the Rayo-Sevilla game was crazy, but I'm going a bit inspired by Nigel here, because I know Nigel's got a hot dog corner play, hasn't he, on the Premier League show. But unlike him, I'm going over a corner line, over 12.5 corners at plus 255. Now, I do know that the corner markets are a little bit more volatile than other markets. So, this is but I'm pretty sure it will be a hot dog, whatever. I don't see it going below plus 200. So you're going to get quite good odds taking this line. 2 of the top 3 teams that average the most corners in La Liga are against each other. In fact, Real Sociedad averaged 7.29 corners, which is the most of anyone in La Liga. Barcelona averaged 7.14, and then you've got Rayo at 6.86, as a few of the teams around the same mark as well. And, I don't think it's going to take much to get this potentially going crazy with corners. I think one team could get 8 or 9 corners in the game, don't know which one, and then you only need, 4 or 5 from the other team. It's just the way that they both play. I mean, Rayo play 4-4-2, they're overlapping, they're always looking to get crosses in. And Real Sociedad, I think one of the reasons they get a lot of corners is they shoot quite a lot. They don't score enough goals. This has all the makings of like a 1-0 or a 0-0 with lots of sort of shots, opportunities, but no one finishes their chances. Goalkeeper saves. And, with those sort of games, but played at still quite a decent tempo. So I think with the corners, the main line's at 10.5, and you can get plus money on that. And that looks a really, really good bet. So I'm only just taking that line a little bit higher, a couple of notches to over 12.5 corners. And I think it's got a really live chance. I really do. Plus 255. I banged on about Rayo for ages about this. The two teams actually met 3 times last year. And I think it went over the goal line in all 3, which was unusual because Real Sociedad had so many unders last year. The meeting in this venue, the corners was 15. So that is a good bit of sort of history to bounce back on there. I think this is going to, if we don't get a winner, I think we're going to really threaten it really close. The way that both teams, the style that both teams play. So over 12.5 corners. Here's my hot dog of the week. It's at plus 255 right now.
Let's get James' hot dog, which is Sunday 2:45 in Italy. Big game of the weekend in Italy. Juventus against Milan here. Juventus are plus 160, Milan plus 175. Almost pick 'em on the money line. It's the 245th official meeting between the two. The last 9 have all gone under 2.5 goals. Unders is minus 152. It's not really hot dog territory. James, what's your hot dog play?
The hot dog play is on the tie here, Dan, which I think right now is plus 255. And yeah, I love these games where you have 2 top teams going head-to-head in a league and the tie is the outsider of 3, because it often happens, when teams are well matched. I've said it before, we sometimes overlook the draw as a really good option. And I think it's a great option here at the prices which are available because, well, lots of reasons really. Starting with Juventus, they're on a run of draws anyway. I think they've drawn their last 4 now in all competitions. really entertaining to watch at the moment, Juventus. They've been one of our favourite teams on the show so far, really, haven't they? I thought they were great value for viewers midweek against Villarreal. Flawed, but gutsy performance. There are issues there. I think defensively they can be got at, which is partly down to personnel, and I think partly the way they're playing under Igor Tudor, who's been really positive in what he's told his players to go out and do. We've obviously seen high-scoring games from Juventus already this season against Dortmund and against Inter. So, tough team to play against, but will always pose a threat, and I think we'll see that again this weekend. And on Milan, I mean, are they now title contenders? You have to ask the question, because they've won 5 in a row in all competitions. They're joint top of the table. They're into second favourites now. In the futures market, they've gone shorter odds than Inter. They're much shorter now than Juventus. Really good form, playing good football, and really nice balance to the team. If you look at that midfield, which again I've referenced before, but Luka Modric is playing as though he's much younger than he is. And I think the signing of Adrian Rabiot, which was a really opportunistic signing in the final week of the window after he came on the market when Marseille put him up for sale, looks like a really good one, rather than just a sort of a panicky, let's get him because he's on the market buy. He's slotted in and he's playing a really particular role in that side, which has proved useful. So lots of good things about Milan at the moment. And obviously they beat Napoli 2-1 last weekend. I just wonder if they're good enough yet to go back-to-back and win against top sides. Not quite sure they are, especially with this being away from home. But they look good enough to avoid defeat. So I think the tie here as the big outsider of 3 plus 255, and even if it shortens, I'd take it any price above plus 200. I think is good value because there's not much to pick between the sides, and I just feel that Juventus being at home here will make sure they do enough to avoid defeat. So that's the hot dog play, which is always one unit on the show. It's the tie at plus 255.
Just get the sense as well, Steve, with Milan. I don't know what James thinks about this, but are there echoes of Napoli from last season? No European football. Do you think? I mean, they're plus 350 to win the title. Napoli plus 125, and Italian squads haven't got the depth of English squads, and maybe that's the telling factor when it comes to challenging on two fronts. Any thoughts, Steve, on futures in Italy?
Well, I did say in the future show that AC Milan have a big advantage this season for that. We didn't expect them to beat Napoli last week, did we? No. Although I think it was a bit of a lucky win, if I'm being honest.
They were lucky, yeah.
But I'll tell you one thing,
2.5 XG, I think.
Expected goals against, though, they have the best in the league, AC Milan. Okay, what have they faced? Maybe just one good team. But that's the lowest. 3.58 is by far the lowest XGA. So that's something to look out for. I think this got every chance of being a draw, really, because Juventus were flat last time they played Champions League. So this could be one of those where if it was a normal week, I would maybe back Juventus to win it. But the draw is very much a possibility.
Just get the sense as well, a little bit of muscle memory might kick in, James, with Serie A sides ahead of an international break. Neither want to lose. It might be one of those situations where they'll shake hands on a draw. If it's 1-1, 68 minutes, that's how it stays, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's very possible. And I think the point you make, Dan, about Milan is spot on. I think there are vibes already of them being what Napoli were last season. The plus 125 on Napoli to win the title is more like the price Inter were last season to win the title. And they kind of ran out of steam by going deep in Europe. And the plus 350 on Milan is pretty much what Napoli were when they were going just for the title last year. So it's interesting. We needed evidence, I felt, on Milan before we got involved in tipping them as title contenders or expecting them to win the title. So I'm not sure the price will be much bigger than this now, the way they're playing. We'll have to monitor that and see what happens.
Let's wrap up Italy with a lean from Steve, shall we? This is midday Saturday, Inter against Cremonese. It's 2nd versus 7th in the league, but maybe Cremonese punching above their numbers, Steve. What's your lean in Italy?
Yeah, the bet is actually both teams score no, minus 165. I mean, the actual bet I like is Inter to win to 0, but that's actually shorter odds. So make sure if you are going to play win to 0 on the same game parlay section, then sometimes both teams score no's the better odds, and this is the case. I think Inter are just starting to fire. I mentioned XGA stats. They're the 3rd best in the league now. They've underachieved in that department. Cremonese are the most overachieving team in terms of points. They're nearly 5 points better than they should be, but their underlying metrics are awful, really, offensively anyway. They're not too bad at the back. But I think this has all the makings of an Inter Milan complete dominant performance. I don't think Cremonese will lay a glove on them. And, it'd be nice to get that 1-0 in your pocket if potentially, rather than worrying about handicaps. But, if I had to stick a score on the game, I'd be looking at 2-0, 3-0. Take both teams to score. No, you just got that outside chance of a 0-0. Very, very small chance of a 0-0, I must say, in your favour. But ultimately, I don't see Cremonese scoring in the game.
Let's get to France, and the boys have both picked the same game for a lean here, so it's sort of borderline official play, but it's two leans, it's two different bets. James, you're first up with Strasbourg against Angers, which is 11:15 a.m. on Sunday Eastern. You suggested that this might have been a 1U anyway for you, but there's just a small caveat here which drops it down to a lean.
Yeah, very close to making this my 1-unit play on Strasbourg, who are minus money to win the game, and also minus money with my pick, which is Strasbourg minus 0.75 on the Asian handicap, which is available at minus 120. Should be a home win this for Strasbourg. They're playing an Angers side who are, for me, one of the weakest sides in the division and are likely to be in the relegation battle this season. Strasbourg have got potential to challenge for the top four. So it's a great chance, actually, really, to back Strasbourg just to win at home here. I mean, you'll make some profit with our lean here if they just win at home. So good chance of doing that for me. Like Marseille, they played in Europe in midweek. Like Marseille, they've got a really big squad, and they did rest a few players for that game at Slovan Bratislava. So they should be okay, I think, this weekend at home and make sure they get the win. The reason that you've alluded to, Dan, that I made it a lean rather than a 1-unit play is that Strasbourg's star striker, we think, as we're recording now, will be out of the game. Player in question being Emmanuel Emega, who's a really good centre-forward, not just for his goals. He gives them so much more in attack than anybody else in the squad. Panicelli is the number 2 striker who's likely to start this weekend, who looks okay, but they are a weaker side when Emega's not there. So I don't think it means they won't win the game. I still think they get the 3 points, but it might be a narrow win, I think, rather than a big win. So just a lean from me, but I would be surprised if they didn't get the 3 points. So it's Strasbourg on the Asian handicap.
And a lean for you, Steve. What's the angle you're coming in for your lean here?
I'm going both teams score no again. Minus 134. I think Strasbourg win to 0, and you can back that at plus 132. But again, I think this is a sort of game where you might want to have a 0-0 in your pocket, because that's the only danger score. Angers are very, very toothless. What was it I said in your message yesterday, James? I've seen more teeth in a jellyfish than I have Angers. Well done to James on his hot dog last week, by the way. Brest -1 on the Asian against Angers. And it was never in doubt, was it? Because as soon as Brest went 2-0 up, I mean, Angers only had 2 shots on target last week. And that's against a Brest defence, which everyone's fancied playing against, by the way, this season. So if they can't score at home against Brest, not even look like scoring, then I don't really give them much chance of scoring here against a Strasbourg side, which is pretty solid. That's one of their biggest strengths, actually. I see this being 1-0 or 2-0. Both teams score no, minus 134. Looks a good bet.
That's Liga done and dusted for now. Some really interesting games in Spain that have fallen into our lean section here for La Liga. We'll get Steve's first up here because it's a 12:30 Saturday game Eastern. It's Athletic Club against Mallorca. Athletic Club, interesting. They started so well, but they've dropped off a little bit here, Steve. But they are still, I think, one of the better defensive sides. Certainly the metrics would suggest that in Spain. What's your lean in this one?
I mean, I'm going under 2.25 goals as the lean, minus 117. Like you don't often get a 2.25 line in Mallorca games, do you? Unless they're against a really top team, because they are known for low-scoring contests. Yet to have a 0-0, I don't think, this year, Mallorca, so they're probably due one. The thing with Athletic Club, they just don't look like scoring goals in games like this at home at the moment. You know, Alaves, they lost like 1-0 at home. They could only draw 1-1 against Girona. General lack of goals. And, you know, what are they, minus 200 on the money line here? Around that mark. Now, you couldn't back them, could you, at all? I mean, this is not the sort of game, especially on the back of Champions League, Both meetings were a draw last year, 0-0 and 1-1. The 0-0 is very much a possibility in this sort of game. So I think it's got to be the under 2.25 goal line, or Mallorca on a handicap, because Athletic Club they're a fade for me at the moment until they get all their players back fit.
Yeah, I think Nico Williams is still out. I mean, he's such a big miss for Athletic Club. He's not played since the last international break. I don't know what the situation is with him, but main goal creator and just makes them tick, really, doesn't he? Let's get to Real Madrid versus Villarreal here. We had the Madrid derby, of course, last week. Unfortunately for James, it went awry with his particular selection. Steve was on the right side of that one. Incredible game, but it's a case of Real Madrid sort of wiping the mouths and just getting on with it here. You're not going to desert them yet, James, with your lean for this one against a Villarreal side who have been in really good nick domestically.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a risk, this, but it's just a lean. It's Real Madrid -1 on the Asian handicap, -155. So you need them to win the game, and you get your stakes back if they win by a single goal. Yeah, I'm sticking with them. They obviously, fell apart, didn't they? You have to say, in the second half, particularly in the derby last weekend, which was clearly their worst 45 minutes of the season so far, but they have bounced back with that Champions League win in Kazakhstan. I guess the issue would be what it will take out of them to have travelled so far and then back for that match. Hard to say, because it's a new journey really for anybody, so we'll find out a bit more about that this weekend. But yeah, I'm kind of focused more on the fact they had been really, really good before the Atletico game, and then they showed they were really good, albeit against weaker opposition, in the Champions League. So I think they can get the win here. I would be surprised if they drop points. I think they should win somehow. So it's just a lean, but it's Real Madrid on the Asian handicap. Just very quickly on Mbappe, he's obviously in tremendous form. Best player in the world, you have to say, really, right now. He's -220 to score. I mean, that's just how well he's putting in the goals. So if you want to back him to score, you might be better off looking at backing him to score 2 goals, which is available at +210. And very quickly on a player at Villarreal, you might want to have a look at George Mikau-Tadz, who came in from Lyon on transfer deadline day. Really good striker, scored against Juventus in midweek. He's +250 to score, so 2 players you might want to take into consideration.
Yeah, just have a look at those players at the various associated markets as well. That game, 3 p.m. on Saturday, Real Madrid against Villarreal, incidentally. Any thoughts on Real, Steve, off the back of their hammering in the derby last week, as James points out? And as we know, they did bounce back in the Champions League. But I don't know. I mean, we sort of discussed it at length last week, didn't we? And I was sort of conflicted as to which way to go. I watched the game. It was a brilliant game of soccer. Real Madrid's still going to be hurting a little bit from it, I would have thought.
No, I think they were surprised by Atletico. But I said it last week that Atletico raised their game for that type of match. I wouldn't put it as too much of a worry for Real Madrid. I think part of the learning curve for Xabi Alonso, and they'll kick on from that. They looked really hungry, didn't they, midweek against Caira? I thought they'd just go there and maybe get like 2-0, 3-0. They wanted to rack up the score, and I think they'll probably want to rack up the score here. This fixture is normally a good one for goals as well. I think you could easily back the goal line in this game, because Villarreal tend to be quite open.
Atletico Madrid is a Sunday fixture, 3 p.m. away at Celta Vigo. I don't think they've won so far this season, have they? And Atleti, I mean, incredibly, this is so unlike Simeone's sides of the past. They've been involved in games, 6 goals, 7 goals, 5 goals the last 3. Are we on the goal line here? What are we doing with this one, James, for a lean?
Yeah, well, I'm backing Atletico here as a lean on the money line, -134, because, yes, amazing back-to-back results there to have won, not just emphatically, but emphatically against really good opposition. So they go into this game in just tremendous form. It's obviously a short burst of form, but you have to take it on board. And you're right, Celta Vigo yet to win in the league. I think they've had 5 draws out of 7. They did win on Thursday night. Yeah, they beat PAOK in Europe. But, there were concerns before the season started, even among some Celta Vigo fans, about whether they had the squad to challenge properly in Europe and also in LaLiga. We'll find out a bit more about that this weekend, I think, because it's a quicker turnaround for Celta Vigo playing on Thursday than it is for Atleti. And I think it will be a challenge for the home side here to be up and fit and fresh for this match against opposition who've got so many things in their favour. So it's a lean on Atletico Madrid to get the win at -134. You may want to have a look at Julian Alvarez in the scoring market, because he's obviously been in great form these last couple of games. He's +115 to score. and an Mbappe Alvarez double to score this weekend. If you want to double up on those top two strikers, is plus 214.
That's nice little parlay. Borja Iglesias has scored in his last 6. Incredible for Celta Vigo. As you said, they've only won 1 of them. I think this could go wild, Steve. Are you into the new Atleti, Steve? I saw I was listening to a podcast, one of the Spanish journalists talking about the fact that sometimes Cholo Simeone was saying that sometimes the club goes ahead of the players and the players have got to catch up, and basically was saying that they've moved on in terms of signings and their attitude and their application. They are no longer sort of, we'll beat you 1-0 and sit back. Are the players catching up? Is there a new sort of overs vibe with Atleti, do you think?
There is. No doubt about it whatsoever. It doesn't surprise me. At some point, they were going to catch fire, and they just seem really in the mood right now. The danger score here, we know what the danger score is, don't we, of course? 1-1. Celta Vigo have a lot of 1-1 draws, but this is probably over 2.5 goals and an away win.
I'm going to play, just for the record, I'm playing over 2.5, over 3.5, over 4.5 in this one.
Ladder. The Dan Roebuck ladder's out.
I'm laddering this one, and I'm going to ladder one of your leans as well in Germany. 2 leans for Steve in Germany before we wrap up. How many leans in Germany have won this? Have you got your stats for this? You probably haven't. I should have asked you this before.
I haven't got the stats, but
they're absolutely. Both last week. Was it 3 the week before? 3 the week before. 2 games for you from Steve. One is 9:30 Eastern on Saturday. The other 12:30 Eastern Saturday. Augsburg-Wolfsburg. Talk us through this one first of all. What's the line we're playing?
Well, it's certainly not an underline. Over 2.5 goals at -141. Pretty straightforward play, really. I mean, Augsburg are really struggling, you know. There's been 2 managers who have already bit the dust in the Bundesliga this season. I think Sandro Wagner could be under threat. Just doesn't look a very good fit whatsoever when you're losing 2-1 at Heidenheim and not looking very good at all. That is a massive concern. And, I mean, against the Wolfsburg side, I mean, last week's game, Wolfsburg, RB Leipzig, there's some stats here, right? 42 shots, 10 big chances, 17 corners, and a combined XG of nearly 5.5. And it ended 1-0 to RB Leipzig after an early goal. Like, imagine if you are on even in play over 1.5, you're actually doing your head, aren't you? But it kind of proves the point of what sort of games that Wolfsburg are involved in. So, again, I'm not really seeing anything to warrant backing the unders here. There's nothing that would suggest it. The metrics, the style, an Augsburg side that just look very, very gettable.
And lastly, every single overs better in the world has got this one ringed on the calendar because of what's happened over the last few weeks with Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayern Munich. Where on earth do we go with this one? What is the line? I know it's going to be an overs line. How high have we got to go to squeeze some value? And is it still, I mean, the numbers here are off the charts, Steve. Where are we going here with Eintracht Frankfurt, Bayern Munich, 12:30 Saturday Eastern?
So, over 3.75 goals is the bet, is the actual lean here. This was nearly...
What's the price? Hang on, what's the price? What's the price?
Not bad, actually, about -110.
Minus money, ladies and gentlemen, for an over 3.75 goal line. This is like Estonian First Division football. Come on, then. What have you got here?
The thing is, though, I mean, I nearly had this as a 1-unit play, you know. But I'm like, it's almost too obvious, isn't it? It's just almost too obvious. Like, every single game of both the teams has gone, I think, over 3.5 this year, hasn't it? Certainly Bayern games have.
Yeah, everyone. Everyone.
Everyone
Champions League and Bundesliga has gone over 2.5 and over 3.5 for both of these teams. Everyone.
So how could you possibly back the under? There's nothing to suggest. The head-to-head as well, by the way, is crazy. Just look at the recent head-to-heads. This was 3-3 last season. Yeah, it's one of those where, I mean, I did actually take, didn't I, a Bayern over on a 1 unit recently, 3.5 line. and I nearly went with it again. But it's just the only reason not to go for it is that we're simply due unders for both teams. And you could get, the match I've just mentioned there, Wolfsburg-Leipzig. Is that what it's going to take to stop a match going over involving these teams, like crazy chances missed, goalkeepers having incredible games? But on the face of it, this is the most obvious bet of the whole week in Europe. It just is. If you can't get on the Asian line, just take over 3.5 goals, about -140. Some would say there was absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the way both teams are playing, there is no suggestion whatsoever of this not being a shootout. So we know the style of the game it's going to be played. We know there's quality finishes on both sides. Yeah, I mean, what's not to like about it?
If you played over 2.5 goals in all of the 14 games that these two sides have played in the Bundesliga, the Champions League, you're plus 556 ahead to level stakes. Over 3.5, plus 1413. Over 4.5, plus 1789. Over 5.5, plus 22.64 points profit. Over 6.5, plus 20 points profit.
How are you going, Dan?
These two sides.
This is the one you're laddering,
I've not got the... well, I'm going to ladder the other one, and I'm going to play over somehow on this. I don't know how I'm going to tackle it, but I don't know what I'm going to do. It's just, the numbers are insane. To round things up, look, you guys have talked about goal scorers over the course of the day. Haven't mentioned Harry Kane, of course, who almost certainly is going to score in this fixture. At the minute, Harry Kane's got 10 goals. Erling Haaland's got 8 goals. Kylian Mbappe has got 8. James, which one of the three is going to score the most league goals only, talking about domestic league goals only, which is, I say Kane's handicap because he's got fewer games to play, but he's still leading the way at the moment. Which one tops the charts out of those three, do you think, come season end?
Great question. I would go just Harry Kane. Just.
Fewer games, but more goals, Steve?
Yeah, fewer games, but more goals.
Yeah. I might go Mbappe, because I just wonder if towards the end of the season, if Bayern are in the Champions League, that Nicholas Jackson might get more minutes and just save Kane for the big games. But look, he's on 10 goals already. He looks $1 million right now. Harry Kane looks incredible. I've never seen him look so good in my life. Long may it continue for Harry, because it's great to see him in such brilliant form.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've highlighted, James has highlighted a couple of goal scorers that you can take a look at, and sometimes. James, just to wrap things up, don't look beyond the obvious here. Just because they're short prices, you highlighted that little parlay that you can have. And, if they keep on winning, it means that, the bookmakers, although they're offering short prices, are still maybe the wrong side of the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Mbappe and Kane in particular, I don't watch the Premier League so much, but they're just in unbelievable form. It's no coincidence, in my opinion, that Mbappe's in this type of form in what is a World Cup season. He knows how to peak. He's a serial winner. And Kane's, as Steve has said, is in amazing form. So, yeah, even when they're short, these guys, they're such brilliant, dominant figures. They're still worth considering.
Great stuff. Steve, James, thanks for your company. Good luck to everyone this weekend. We will keep everyone updated via our X feeds. Get your comments in the chat. Get your picks in the chat as well, in the YouTube comments below. Make sure you follow us. Subscribe at Because We Win or Betting Weekly channel's got lots of content coming your way. It is an international break, of course. We'll be looking at World Cup qualifiers and that sort of stuff. Lots of tennis, as per usual, from all of us. For today, though, have a good betting weekend. We'll speak soon.